Hello and welcome to Rob from the Internet Talks About Beer. For sure, we discuss different styles of beer, beer history, beer flavor profiles. We give shout outs to breweries we think make exceptional beer, and we talk about whatever else comes to mind during the word vomit that is our conversation. I'm Rob. If you enjoy what I'm doing, if you like this weird edutainment style that I'm trying to put out there, I'd appreciate it if you'd like the video, maybe subscribe to the channel, click a little bell to be notified when there's new episodes, or, just tell your friends if you got friends that like beer, because everybody's got friends that like beer. All right. Joining me today is one of my oldest friends, and he's a fellow content creator. This is Aaron with The Hollywood Outsider. Aaron, if you would, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into craft beer, and what it is you do when you're not talking to people like me about craft beer.
So this one conversation that I've had about craft beer. Oh, man. So how?
I mean, I can help you out. I basically got Aaron into craft beer.
Yeah. This is the shortest story you're ever going to get.
That's right.
I listen to your show, and there's a lot of experts on there. I'm not one of them.
No, it's well, yeah, but so I also have a lot of non-experts. Come on now.
You do, but I've heard a lot of people where I'm like, wow, I'm going to feel dumb. Usually if I'm guesting on a movie podcast, I know exactly what I'm talking about. So I will do my best to, absorb the flavors and the senses and all that.
There you go.
Deep thoughts.
Yeah. Aaron is not.
I'm a whiskey drinker.
Yeah. Aaron is a whiskey drinker. He likes his Jack. That's his go-to. So, Aaron used to not like beer
normally,
but
yeah,
it was
a little bit of a lag, just so you know. There's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, there always is just a little bit of a lag. Aaron never used to like beer, but it was only because he had never had beers that were good.
That's true. So I pretty much liked whiskey for most of my life. It got me through some tough years. And then Rob here, from the internet, he loved beer. It's always beer, and he's got all these. And it wasn't just I like to get drunk. It was actual. He really cared about the flavor. He really cared about the kind of beer it was. And I'm very particular. There's, for whatever reason, some beers give me a massive migraine. I don't really know. It could be the gluten. I have no idea, but it's something that's always just kept me away from beer. And he's like, well, have you ever tried porters and stouts and stuff, which I had never had at that time? And sure enough, IPAs, migraine, a lot of other ones give me a migraine, but for whatever reason, porters and stouts are great for me, and started to really have an appreciation for beer. And every time really I would try one, it's one Rob recommended. And, there's very few that he's been wrong about, but he also knows me. So I'm sure that makes a difference.
It does. Yeah, it really does. All right. So what is it you do when you're not talking to me about beer?
Well, outside of day work, I've had a podcast on movies and TVs for 11 years now. 11 years. Well, actually, I'll go way back. So originally I started a website. Rob here helped built it and taught me how coding works. So I learned a lot about how coding works, HTML, and that got increasingly more difficult because so many other sites were starting to do the kind of movie and TV news that I was already doing, more opinion-based stuff. And so at that time, there weren't that many shows or podcasts that were focused on movie and TV that weren't just kind of taking the piss out of movies and TV. It was all negative. And I wanted something where I could talk about movies and TV that was positive. So I went out and started The Hollywood Outsider. And it's based on, opinion based, but also it's meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyable. It's meant to talk about movies as an object we love, as opposed to something we dislike. We have a lot of fun. We've had several hosts over the years. We've won best podcast in TV and film, been nominated numerous times. So it's been quite the journey, and we're at Buy Popcorn and thehollywoodoutsiders.com on the web. And what else I do? And also I do numerous other podcasts. I do Presenting Hitchcock, which is Hitchcock based. All of his films we're going through. We're almost done with all of them, actually. and and there's several other endeavors podcast wise that I've done. So but I was doing it long before everybody had one, which you've got one now. So congratulations.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Yeah. And not only do I have the video version, which is what we're doing, this also gets transcribed into just an audio only version for people who just want their ears assaulted and not also their eyeballs. So, yeah. Yeah.
So on the go, but legal.
That's right. Beer on the go, but legal. The original website that I set up for Aaron and taught him how to maintain was called Let's Talk About Movies.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it was.
I love that. Yeah. I think somebody else is doing something with that.
Probably. I mean, that was, God, what was it? That was what, 97? 96?
Yeah, it's late 90s. It was late 90s. Yeah, it was a long time ago.
Yeah, back when the web was still wild and woolly. All right, so today,
back when things were nicer.
Yeah, things were nicer. So today's beer is neither a porter nor a stout. It is Dragon's Milk Solera. So this is technically speaking, this is if you look at the Beer Judge Certification Program, the BJCP, it is style 22B American Strong Ale. But what sets it apart is the fact that it is a Solera beer. If you're wondering what Solera is a process of aging liquids such as beers, wines, and high-end vinegars. Where it's blended in a fractional way so that it's spread out over multiple barrels, and the barrels are all different aged, but you take some from each barrel and you mix them into the final product. This one is also slightly different than a standard Solera in the fact that it's aged in Foeders. So if you're not familiar, a Foeder is like a really giant barrel. It starts at technically, I think the smallest size is 160 gallons for the smallest size Foeder. It's a Dutch word. It's spelled Foeder, but it's pronounced Fooder. So it's like Foeder. And it was traditionally used for wild and sour ales, but it's seen quite a growth in just standard stouts and other ales like this American Strong Ale. So the way the Solera process works is, back up a little bit. Solera means on the ground in Spanish. So traditionally they were stacks of barrels. Yeah. They were traditionally stacks of barrels. They put the newest stuff on top, the oldest stuff on the bottom, on the ground, and they would move from barrel to barrel down to the bottom. And when you got to the bottom, that was your finished product. So, this beer is kind of funny because it's named after the process, even though it is a strong ale. They just named it after the process that they were using. It's kind of cool.
It's very cool.
Yeah, for people who are wondering, proper serving temperature for this beer is 45 to 55 degrees in freedom units. That's 7 to 13 in actual temperature units Celsius. The ABV is 10%. And the perceived IBUs are 30, which is not real high, but it's not insignificant. Proper glassware for this is either a snifter or a tulip style glass, which is what I will be using. Although it is perfectly fine in a shaker pint. Yeah, right there, a shaker pint, or even a no-nick pint. So it should be a nice dark caramelly color. This one has a nice caramel color to it. Should have like a medium to medium high hop aroma. Should when you drink this, you should get lots of malty sweetness. You should get what else should you get out of this? You should get like dark fruits, raisins, figs, dates. And that is indeed what you get. It's
that's a lot.
What's that?
Good.
It's
good. It's a lot lighter than I thought it would be.
Yeah, no, yeah, right. So it's akin to the American barley wine, although it's a more malt balanced than a barley wine. The barley wine tends to be a little more bitter than this one is, a little more hop forward. But yeah, this one's nice.
Wish I would have brought my fancy glass like you, but instead I have a different one.
Oh, no. Shaker pint's perfectly fine, man. Don't worry about it. So it does have a sweetness right up front. And in that sweetness, you get kind of like a brown bread flavor, and I get dates and figs, maybe even a little bit of raisin, not a whole lot, but get like little hints of chocolatey flavor with it too. And I think that's just from the aging process.
Not too much though. I mean,
no, it's
with their porter and their stouts and whatnot that I've had, they definitely get that cocoa or coffee based flavors, but I don't get any of that with this.
Yeah. So I mean, that's what Dragon's Milk is known for. New Holland Brewing in Holland, Michigan is where this is from. This one is available year round, according to their website. It used to just be a seasonal, but apparently it became popular enough that, or they've got the Solera process down enough that they can offer it year round, which is cool because it's a good beer. It's a nice departure from the porters and stouts. And at 10%, it's totally crushable. You can just like have 5 or 6 of these, right?
No, based on our last little vacation that we took our camping trip, where you brought a few that were, what are they, 11%? Were they 11%?
Yeah.
Whatever they were, it was 11% alcohol.
Yeah.
And I had 3 and I was out by 8:30 because
I
crashed.
So yeah, Aaron and I have been going on camping trips for the last 20 years. And this year we got together, and where we were supposed to go was closed because they got 2 feet of snow the day before we were supposed to show up, and all the roads were closed, and
makes it hard.
So we diverted, and we ended up renting a cottage in Eagle River, which was nice. And I brought some what one was it? It was from Wild Card. It was the Imperial Stout. The Irish Monarchy, Irish Nobility. That's what it was. Irish Nobility, Irish Stout. Yeah, and I think they were like a
really, really good from what I recall.
But he doesn't recall much. Yeah. So I brought not
very much. No.
What I think I brought 5 of them, and Aaron had 3 the first day, and he was out by like 8:30. he was feeling no pain.
Yeah.
So what's coming up? Just for context, this show will be airing this coming Friday, Aaron. So what's coming up on the Hollywood Outsider?
We just had an episode where we talked about if politics is ruining entertainment. And that was a pretty interesting conversation that we had. I thought pretty even keel, right down the middle. But then, we get some holidays off. We actually have an annual Christmas special, which is it's fun. It's something that we did so many of them that we now just kind of almost like the annual Christmas specials you would have as a kid, where it's just kind of cut together as the best parts of all the Christmas specials. So it makes one good one that we release every year. That's always fun. And then coming up in January, we'll have our Ho Awards, where we kind of go through what we thought was the best of the year and what's coming. And then another episode where we talk about what's coming up in the next year.
Cool. Awesome.
It's all pretty exciting. There's a lot of cool movies coming out.
There are.
Hopefully.
I just finished it this morning. I was watching, I don't know if you've seen it on Netflix, the show 1899.
I've seen the trailer for it. It's from the creators of Dark.
Yes,
which is a fantastic show, and yeah, definitely recommend that. I haven't watched 1899 yet. Is this one subtitled as Dark was, or is this in English?
Yes. People in the show speak English.
You seem so sure about that.
Well, people in the show speak English, but there's also people that speak Danish, German, French. So because it takes place on an ocean liner that's headed from Europe to the United States. So there's people from all different ethnicities on this boat. And so, but they do subtitle, all the non-English speaking parts. But I was just wondering if you'd seen it. I just finished it this morning, and it was great. I knew I kind of knew the direction the show was going from about the third episode. But I tell you what, the last episode takes a hard friggin' left turn right at the very end, and I was like, oh, I was not expecting that ending.
Does it end strong? I mean, and what I mean by that is, I don't care if it takes a left turn as long as it is a fascinating turn and it lands.
Yes.
Does it land?
Yes.
Okay.
It, like I said, without ruining it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, or for people who are going to watch it. If you're into these type of shows like Dark, shows that are these kind of weird, off kilter, creepy, funky sci-fi, horror, fantasy type shows, you'll kind of be able to tell the direction that the story's going by about the third episode, maybe the fourth, if you're not paying super close attention. But like I said, it takes this unexpected turn at the very last second, and they do a good job with it. They left just enough plot hooks open from the story that if they decide somehow to make if it gets enough popularity or whatever to make a second season, they could. But the ending is strong enough that if they don't ever make a second season, it stands on its own for a good ending.
Okay. That's unlike Westworld.
That
needs that final season, and we still don't have it.
Yeah. Well, So,
yeah. I'll have to check that out.
Before today, have you had this one? I don't remember. Have you had this beer before?
No.
Okay.
No, I've never had this one. I've had Dragon's Milk. I've had Dragon's Milk, and just, proper, I guess. And that's a great beer. I don't know. Is Dragon's Milk pretty widespread across the country? Very popular?
It is. Do you know? Yeah, it's nationally distributed in the United States. We used to get it here in Ontario, but I've noticed in the last year or two that I don't see it anymore. So I don't know if it's just some new regulations that went through, because it is a higher alcohol beer, and they tax high alcohol beers a little differently up here. And technically, if it goes
Canada, eh?
Yeah, in Canada, eh? Up here in the Great White North, eh? Take off, you hoser. Yeah, they tax it differently when it hits a certain percentage, and I think that Dragon's Milk just hits that percentage at the right number where it's probably not economically feasible for them to export it to Canada anymore. So it's one of those that I pick up every time I come back to the States to visit friends and family, and it was nice to see that they this year they had just a whole bunch of varietals. So they had the standard Dragon's Milk, which is always available, but then they had one that was like made with Stroop waffles, and they had another one that was like a coffee and chocolate one, and I can't remember what the third one was. And they had one that was called Triple Mash, which was my favorite of the varietals. It comes in at 17.5%. It's a strong, it's a strong beer, but it's got really good flavor. And I was looking it up, and I don't remember exactly because I've been looking at so many beers lately, but I think it's aged in one set of barrels and then transferred to another set of barrels. So they basically double barrel age it, which is why it's so strong.
It'll only take 2 of those for me to end up without my pants on in the yard. So.
In someone else's yard.
So careful. That's even worse. Even worse.
Right.
I will tell you. I meant to tell you a little story about this, just because it's a podcast. So I'll give you a beer story. So this glass that I have is from the Red Dog Saloon. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
Okay. The Red Dog Saloon it's a bar in Juneau, Alaska. And it's when you dock, because the only way you can get into Juneau is by ship or plane, right? So when you take a boat into Juneau, you get off and go around the tourist area. And right there's a bar called the Red Dog Saloon. It's well known. It has sawdust on the floor, thousands of pictures all over the wall, a lot of writings from people that have visited there over the years and whatnot. And I was there on cruise with my friend Brian Williams, who used to be a host on the Hollywood Outsider, actually, and he was in the Coast Guard in Alaska. So when we got there, the first thing he said was, "We have to go to the Red Dog Saloon." And I mean, you know me, I'm very inquisitive. When I always ask probably too many questions, I like to know stuff. And so the first thing I said was, "Well, why? What's what's the Red Dog Saloon?" "Oh, don't worry. It's one of those things you have to go to when you come to Juneau." And of course I'm like, well, why? Why do you have to go to, why is the Red Dog Saloon? It just sounds, why is this the place I have to go? He's like, "Just trust me, you have to go. Everybody, when they hit Juneau, they have to go. It's just a thing you have to do when you visit Juneau." And so, of course, I'm like, why is this a thing I have to do? I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't mind doing it, but what's the history? What are, I always ask too many questions. It's in my nature.
He really does.
And so after a while, he just gets, yeah, I do. And after a while, he's the kind of guy that doesn't like too many questions, I mean, if he's in an interrogation, he'd ask for a lawyer 3 minutes in. That's just how he is. So he says, "Fine, we're not going to go." He does one of those moves, kind of gets a little pouty McPowderson about it. And I'm like, "God damn it, we're going to go to this thing." And I grab him and we go in, and it ends up being one of the coolest bars I've ever been to. So that's a long version of the story. Sometimes
and then you
just
stole a
shut
glass.
up and go with the guy telling the story.
You stole a glass, right?
I bought it.
You're such a goody.
But the table that we got, as soon as we get there, we get seated, and there's 1,000 different kinds of pictures all over the wall, like 1,000 different from all over the country and everything else. We get seated right next to my table. I'm a huge Green Bay Packer fan. Forgive me for that, because it's a Michigan beer, and I'm sure there's some Detroit Lions fans. But we get seated, and right across from my table is a huge Green Bay Packers plaque. It's like it was meant to be.
Yeah, there's no accounting for people's taste. I mean, no. I
still don't know why it's so amazing to go, other than it's a cool place.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always amazed up here in Ontario. I'll be driving along, and invariably there's always somebody with a Green Bay Packers bumper sticker or license plate frame. I'm like, you're in another fucking country. Why are you watching this? Why are you watching the Green Bay Packers? If you're going to watch football and you're in Ontario, wouldn't you watch like the Buffalo Bills? Because they're literally like just across the border, like right there. Nope. Green Bay. So
to be fair, in the Great White North, there haven't been that many teams to root for over the years. So Green Bay is about the best they got going on. And Buffalo just started getting good. So.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess. But yeah, it's amazing how many.
Right when we started getting bad.
Yeah, well, it's funny how that works. It's ebb and flow, man.
It is, man.
I mean, everyone knows I'm not much of a sports guy. I watch hockey. Though I'm not one of those crazed hockey fans. If it's on, I'll sit down and watch it, and I'll follow the game. If it's not on and they say, "Hey, someone's playing hockey," I'll be like, "Cool, I'm watching this other show. I'll just check the scores later." But it's funny how many people up here love NFL football. Even though there is CFL up here, there's Canadian Football League, which is a little different, but it's very similar. Man, people up here love the NFL. It's funny. You'll see, like I've seen Dallas Cowboy bumper stickers on cars up here, and it's like,
really?
Have you ever been to Texas? It's like, how do you follow this team?
Yeah, that's crazy. How so back to beer. I kind of want to. I don't think I've heard you on the show tell me, and I don't really know this story. I remember when you started getting into beer, like roughly. I mean, we've known each other since high school, really.
Yep.
So I remember when you kind of started getting heavier into it, but I don't remember exactly why you were so attracted to beer. Because you've never approached it like, I want to get a buzz or I want to get drunk. I mean, it's really been about flavor for you, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
How'd you get into it?
Well, so I mean, beer brewing is actually in my family. I had an uncle. I doubt he's still working there, but I had an uncle who was a brewer for Coors in Colorado. So beer, beer is a big part of our family. I'm German and Irish heritage. Both sides of that family, both sides of that coin of my family were into drinking. Beer is a big part of that as well. I started really getting into to different beers. I guess it was college. Was it about 91, 92? I was out with a bunch of friends at a bar, and they were all drinking Bud Light and Miller Lite and what have you. And there was this beer on tap that I had never had before that was called Killian's Red. And I mean, it wasn't anything spectacular, but it was different. It had a different flavor profile, and it was a little sweeter on the front end with a little bit more of a bitter bite on the end. It didn't just taste like, slightly flavored water like the other beers that were out. And that's that's what did it for me, was like, oh wow, beer doesn't have to all taste like Miller Lite or Bud Light or Coors Light or what have you. And then I started seeking out things, and back in 91, 92, the craft beer scene really wasn't all that big, especially in our area. There weren't any local
at all.
Yeah, there weren't any local breweries. The closest thing we had to a craft beer brewery was New Glarus up in New Glarus, Wisconsin. And they were just a brewery. They weren't really considered a craft brewery. And then slightly after that, I think it was like 94, 95, I discovered up in the Milwaukee area, there's Sprecher Brewing. And they were a craft brewery. They were a fairly large craft brewery, but they made all sorts. They made like a Bavarian ale, and they made like a honey ale and things like that. And so it really started me going, well, okay, if these guys can make flavors like this, what are other people making? And that's kind of how it all started. And then I started playing around and brewing it myself on and off, and then it just kind of snowballed from there.
Now it's a full-blown podcast.
That's right. It's a way of life now.
Although I got to tell you, it's really nice because, I've been doing this podcast thing for a long time. It's nice to actually have a podcast with somebody on it about a hobby that they enjoy. That actually is, well-informed, because it's like when I talk to other movie podcasters and they tell me about, I've been doing this for a while, but they're really not very verse in all film. It's just like superhero movies or whatever it is there's whatever
little pigeonhole that they're in.
They just watch it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, for me, I started this podcast because I wanted to put information out there for people who might be a little bit scared to try different beers. I mean, if you've always had Coors or you've always had Miller in the house, and that's the only thing you've ever had, you might be, you might have a little trepidation stepping outside of your comfort zone and trying different beers. So that's what started this. I was like, well, I could put out a podcast that talks about the different styles of beers, talks about their flavor profiles, and puts it in terms that people will understand. No beer snobbery, no big industry terms or things like that. I do put a little stuff in there like, the style of this beer, if you want to look it up, is style 22B for this one in particular. And I tell you, here's the proper glass, here's what you should, here's the things I get and what typically you get for the flavors. But everybody's palate is a little different. So you might not pull out the same flavors. Like, out of this, as it's warmed up a little bit, I'm starting to pull like toffee flavors out of it. So caramel and things like that really start coming out as it warms up.
Yeah.
And it started. That's the whole reason I do this. So it's and I like to have the show. So it's like, okay, we front load it with some information about the beer. We talk about the style, what it should be served in, and then we just start drinking it and start talking. So to make it really approachable, so it just sounds like it really is just you and I, two friends sitting around shooting the shit about beer and whatever else comes to mind. Yeah, because that's what happens when you're in a pub. you sit down, you start drinking, and you just start talking. You might turn to somebody who you don't know and say, "Hey, yeah, I'm drinking that same beer. What do you think of it?" Blah blah blah. And you start a conversation, and before you know it, you're talking religion, you're talking world politics, you're talking hole in the ozone layer, cures for cancer, time travel. Who knows what you're talking about?
Yeah, let's talk politics. That'll be fun. We haven't done enough of that in the States for a while.
I try to keep politics and religion out of the podcast, unless that religion is the worship of beer and beer related products,
or the spaghetti monster,
or yes, the spaghetti monster. His noodly appendage has touched me. Ramen.
Ramen. It's funny. That's how they got a new Doctor Who. There you go. If you want to.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I have my TARDIS up there, and I've got a picture here that I had done when we went to Comic-Con the first time in San Diego. I had that picture drawn.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So, Doctor Who,
I'm on number 2, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, good for you. Jodie Whittaker is no longer the Doctor. They did the transition, and for they're actually they actually brought back David Tennant for the moment for the 60th anniversary. So at the end of the Jodie Whittaker series, she transformed back into David Tennant, which is absolutely hilarious because he comes out of the TARDIS and regenerates, and the first thing he does is he's like running his tongue across his teeth, and he's like, "Wait a minute, I recognize these teeth." And then, so he's going to be the Doctor. He's now the 10th and 14th Doctor. So he'll be the Doctor for, I think it's just for the special that's coming up, the 60th anniversary special. And then they're switching over to the new guy, whose name I cannot remember off the top of my head. But I've seen him in action, and he seems like he's going to be a good fit. And they just announced the new companion for him too. It's some wafy
Millie
little
Gibson.
Yeah, wafy little blonde girl.
Millie Gibson is the new companion.
Yep.
And then Nakuti Gatwa is the new Doctor.
Yeah, Gatwa. Yeah, I couldn't remember what his name was, but yeah. And I've seen some I've seen their little they do those little snippets where they're showing them behind the scenes when they're recording stuff and everything, and he looks like, I think he's going to be a good fit for the Doctor. I think it's about time they had a person of color be the primary Doctor. I mean, they did a little retconning with I can't think of the actress's name who was the black lady who was the Doctor in a couple of the flashback episodes. But it's nice that they're actually expanding, that the Doctor doesn't have to be just a white guy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it was great.
It opens it up. Now,
go ahead.
We were just talking recently on the show about Doctor Who, because what I didn't know was, I know the whole regeneration thing, right? Where the Doctor regenerates and is a new Doctor at some point. What I don't know is, was that always the intent of the show, or is it because there was an actor who got ill or died or something, and they just did it as a recasting thing that became part of the show? Do you know the answer to that?
It's a little bit of both. So William Hartnell, who was the original Doctor, was fairly old when he got cast, and when they were originally making the show, they weren't sure how long he was going to be able to maintain the role, because it was back then, and even now it's still probably a fairly demanding role. You're running around, you're doing all sorts of stuff. And he wasn't exactly a spring chicken. So they were trying to come up with a contingency plan in case he got ill. What would they do? How would they replace him? How would they explain it if something happened? Mm-hmm. And they came up with the idea of the regeneration. And originally, now they've since explained it away. But originally, the Doctor was only supposed to be able to have 12 regenerations, and then that was it. But they did away with that. Well, they're on Doctor 14 now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that number doesn't hold then. I guess they found a way around it.
Yeah. They changed the lore a little bit, saying that that the character who is Doctor Who isn't necessarily a true Time Lord, that they're actually from the original race that the Time Lords evolved from, so that they can regenerate more. And as they evolved and became the Time Lords, they lost the ability to infinitely regenerate.
Okay.
So
whatever they can do to make this work.
That's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the nice thing about sci-fi, though, is, it's real easy to just kind of to bend the rules and change the story, because, you can do that because, well, this is a fantasy sci-fi show about an alien race that can regenerate to begin with. Well, we can change the rules midway if we have to. Yeah.
That's true. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love science fiction. What's your opinion on Tremors? Is that science fiction or just fiction?
Tremors is it's science fiction and fantasy. It's science fiction because it has to do with these giant monsters, the graboids, which are based off of an actual creature. They're like a mutated creature, just like the old 50s sci-fi, them with the giant ants. That's sci-fi, but it's but it's fantasy also. I mean, because of the ridiculousness of the situation. So
them used to scare the crap out of me. Just the idea of, I don't know, 6-story ants is terrifying, and the effects for its time were actually pretty good.
Yeah. I have a whole collection of that I call my old school monster movies, and I've got things like, I've got the original Dracula and Werewolf and all that stuff from Universal, but I also have things like Attack of the 50-Foot Woman and Them and The Day the Earth Stood Still and things like that. Plan 9 from Outer Space.
You should throw that one away.
No, I keep that one around just because it's so bad.
That's an awful movie. It's awful.
It really is. It really is. So obviously you're on number 2, so you must kind of like this beer.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It's not like what I normally would drink, though. Honestly, I mean, what I normally drink. It's usually a lot thicker. I think you've often told me that the porters and stouts are great, but don't have too many of them because you're going to have to go for a run the next day and burn some of that off because they're so high in calories.
They are. Yeah, they tend to be a lot higher in calories.
This feels lighter. It feels it's full, but it's not too full. It's not overbearing. It's not thick. It actually feels, the texture feels very similar to your Miller Lights. It's just the flavor is nothing like that.
Right.
Thank God you brought that up, because we grew up with people drinking Miller Lite all the time, and that was nasty. It's just nothing personal. If you like it, just I can't get into it.
Well, what was it? It was it's got to have been 6 or 7 years now. I was at our mutual friend the Wallachs for a cookout, and I showed up with 3 beers that were all double-digit ABV bomber style bottles, so they're 22-ounce bottles. And one other friend that was there, one other mutual friend of theirs, showed up with a 30-pack of Corona, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I just brought myself a 30-pack of Corona."
Family.
Well, and I'm like, he looks at me with my 3 beers. He's like, "You only brought 3 beers?" And I'm like, "Dude, I held up one bottle. It was like a 12%. I'm like, this one bottle has more alcohol than your 30 bottles combined, and I won't be going to the pisser every 2 minutes." Yeah. It's not about quantity for me anymore. It's about quality. And I posted this on social media last month. I'm like, I'm at the age where I drink what I want and I drink when I want. And I'm going to drink, I'm going to drink better beers. I am not afraid if I have a beer like, just the other day I cracked a beer. I won't say who it was from because I don't want to badmouth any brewer, because a lot of their other beers are great. I took 3 sips of this beer that I just paid $5 for a can of, and I was like, nope, not for me. And I poured the rest down the drain. I'm not afraid. I'm not one of those people who are like, oh, I paid $5 for this, I have to drink it. No, I'm not going to drink something I don't like. I'm not going to put myself through that. I'm going to go out and grab a different beer, one that I know I like, that'll get that taste out of my mouth.
Do you feel like craft beer is more accepted these days? Because for a while it was very people that drank Miller Lite and Coors kind of looked down on, oh, you snobs. Meanwhile, people that drank craft beer, not you, but I did see other people that they would think, oh, you're just not as enlightened, like wine drinkers to a degree. And then
Yeah.
there's that nice middle ground of craft drinkers that really just try to get other beer drinkers to see why they like it so much.
Yeah.
It's turned a corner in that respect.
For the most part, it has. It's become, I mean, craft beer is now, just part of the beer scene, part of the regular beer scene. You're not a macro brewer, you're not a micro brewer, you're just a craft brewer. And going to your thing about, people looking down on people who drink Miller Lite and Coors Light, it's like, drink what you like. I mean, if that's what you like, drink it, but don't be afraid to try other things is my thing. I have nothing against, I have nothing against the macro beers, and I've been known to drink the macro beers, especially if I'm someplace and that's what they have. I'm not going to turn it down. I'm going to drink it. I know which ones taste better to me, and I'll seek those out if those are my only options. But there are still people who are beer snobs, who think if you're not drinking craft beer, you don't know what you're doing. And and then there's us that I consider either beer geeks or beer nerds. We're not about looking down on anybody for what they're drinking. We're about getting people to try craft beer to expand their horizons. And I'm not going to tell you don't drink Miller, because if you like Miller, fucking drink Miller. Who gives a shit? But don't be afraid to try. Say, like up here we've got a nice little brewery called Nickelbrook that makes a blonde ale that's called Cause and Effect. And if you're a person who drinks Miller or Coors, this would be a slight departure from that flavor wise, but it's still in that same vein. So you're not going to be so far out of your wheelhouse that you're going to feel completely out of place or uncomfortable. And you just give them a try, and you never know. I mean, you don't know what you like if you don't try it.
I'm not a beer snob, obviously, because I drink more whiskey, way more whiskey than I drink beer. But I do want to know what's the appeal of like Miller Lite. And I'm not saying that as a negative. It doesn't taste like anything to me. And I've had Miller Lite, I've had Bud Light. They just Coors Light, I think, has a little flavor, but Bud Light and Miller Lite do nothing for my palate.
So yeah, typically the beers like that, they're not brewed for flavor quality. They're brewed for refreshment. So you're just looking for something cold. You're looking for something with a little bit of alcohol in it to give you that that nice slightly inebriated feeling that everyone likes to have, loosen you up a little bit. But you don't want to lose control, and you don't want something because like there are a lot of people who are like, oh, you can't drink stouts in the summer. That's a winter beer. Okay, maybe for you, I'm the guy who'll be sitting out on the patio with a bourbon barrel-aged stout, when it's 95 degrees Fahrenheit out, and I'll be enjoying it. You can have your Miller Lite at that time too, but it's just one of those things that they're brewed for consistency. They're brewed for a specific purpose, and that is to provide a consistent and relatively inexpensive beer for the masses. And for so long, that's all that was available. That's what a lot of people, they're like, no, this is what I drink because this is what's always been available.
I can attest to you drink stout in the summertime because you're off work, you have an hour time change. You're off work before me, and I'll get a picture of you with a beer in a pool, and I get to be sad for the next 45 minutes.
That's right. And that beer is usually a stout.
I can't do it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one nice thing about me being in the proper time zone and you living in the past.
We need to finally, let's get rid of the freaking daylight savings time. It's time to get away from it.
Let's go. No, it really is time to get away from that. And honestly, I'd go one farther and say, let's get rid of fucking time zones. Who gives a shit? If it's 6 a.m. and it's dark where you live and it's 6 a.m. and it's light where I'm at, who gives a shit? 6 a.m., man. That's right.
You're changing the tides of.
I'm going extreme, Aaron. I'm going extreme.
Well, if there's anything America loves these days, it's extremism.
That's right. It's extremism. That's right. There's got to be a platform for me out there somewhere. End daylight savings time and end time zones.
And time altogether.
Well, time is a construct, my
want,
friend.
You take off when you want. Nothing matters.
That's right. Nothing matters. Well, it really doesn't in the grand universal scope of things. What we're doing here on this planet really makes absolutely zero difference. The universe doesn't give a shit.
Only to those close to us.
That's right. Only for our little microcosm does it make any difference. All right, man. So where can people find you if they're looking for you on the socials?
Oh, social media. Well, I mean, I'm on Twitter. Is Twitter still around? I don't know. Every time I look, apparently Elon's getting ready to break it down.
Oh, Nero is burning Rome, but it's still around.
I'm at Buy Popcorn on Twitter. And yeah, you know what? Can I ask your thoughts on that real quick? I don't know if you have the time.
But yeah, I've got time.
I like a little introspection. Yeah. What's going on with Elon? What do you think? Do you think he's a subtle genius here by whatever he's doing by spending all that money just to apparently tank it, or is it some brilliant ploy?
Yeah, I don't think it's a brilliant ploy by any means. I think he's trying to tank it out of spite now. He's like, oh, I'm this happy-go-lucky asshole who all this money. I'm gonna buy Twitter, and they held him to it, and they sued him to make him go through with his promise. And he's pissed off that he actually had to spend $44 billion to buy something he didn't really want to buy in the first place. So he's just going to try and make it as miserable as possible to basically tank it.